The sky was bright blue on the special day in London. It was the day of King Charles's big ceremony. Today he would become the official king with a crown on his head. People from all places came to see this rare event. Some had waited all night on the streets just to get a good spot to watch. Inside Kensington Palace, the royal family was getting ready. Prince William stood in front of a tall mirror, fixing his fancy uniform. He had many medals that showed his service to the country. His hands shook a little. This was not just any day. It was the day his father would become king, and William would take one step closer to his own future as king someday. In the next room, Princess Kate was helping her children get dressed. Prince George, the oldest at 9 years old, looked serious as he tried to stand still. He wore a small version of his father's outfit. Kate helped him with his tie, making sure it was just right. "Remember, George, you have an important job today," she said softly. "You will carry part of Grandpa's robe during the ceremony." George nodded. He knew this was big. One day, he too would have a crown placed on his head. But that was far away, and today was about his grandfather. Princess Charlotte, 7 years old and always proper, sat still as Kate fixed her hair. She wore a white dress with a small silver crown of flowers. She was excited about her special dress and couldn't stop twirling to see it move. "Will there be many people watching us, Mummy?" Charlotte asked. "Yes, darling. People from all around the world," Kate answered with a smile. "But just be yourself and remember to smile and wave." Little Prince Louis, only 5 years old, was the hardest to keep still. He jumped on the bed in his small suit, making everyone laugh. "Louis, please be careful with your outfit," Kate said, trying not to smile at his joy. "Today we need to be on our best behavior." William came into the room, looking handsome in his uniform. When he saw his family, his serious face changed to a warm smile. No matter how big the event was, his family always made him feel better. "How is everyone doing?" he asked, picking up Louis and giving him a spin before setting him down. "Daddy, will I have to sit still for a very long time?" Louis asked with big eyes. William laughed. "Yes, quite a while. But I know you can do it. This is a special day for Grandpa." A palace worker knocked on the door. "Your Royal Highnesses, the cars are ready." Kate took a deep breath and looked at her family. They had practiced for this day many times. The children knew when to walk, when to sit, and when to stand. But it was still nerve-wracking. William went to Kate and held her hands. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. Kate smiled back at him. They had been through many royal events together, but this one felt different. After today, William would be the direct heir to the throne, with all the duties that came with it. "Are we ready?" William asked his family. The children stood straight and nodded. Even little Louis tried to look serious, though his eyes still danced with excitement. As they walked through the palace halls, staff members bowed and curtsied. Outside, the sound of cheering crowds grew louder. The family got into their shiny black cars with the royal flags on the front. William looked at his children, feeling proud. They were so young but already understood their unique place in history. As the cars pulled away from the palace, he reached for Kate's hand. Together, they would guide their family through this historic day, balancing their roles as royals with their most important job as parents. The royal cars moved slowly through the London streets. Inside the first car, Prince William looked out at the huge crowds. People stood 10 deep along the road. They waved flags and took pictures with their phones. Some had camped out all night just to see the royal family pass by. "Look at all the people," Prince Louis said. He pressed his small face against the window. His eyes were wide with wonder. Princess Charlotte sat up very straight, just like her mother taught her. She waved at the people with a perfect royal wave, hand moving side to side, palm facing down. She had practiced this wave many times. "Remember to smile," Kate told her children softly. "These people have waited hours to see us." Prince George sat quietly next to his father. He watched how William stayed calm even with all the noise and excitement outside. George wanted to be just like his father. He knew that one day he too would be Prince of Wales and then king. "Are you nervous, Dad?" George asked in a quiet voice that only William could hear. William smiled at his son. "A little," he admitted, "but it's normal to feel nervous about important things. The trick is to not let others see it." The cars passed by famous London places, Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, and Trafalgar Square. Every spot was filled with happy people cheering. Many held signs that said, "God save the King," or "We love you, William and Kate." As they got closer to Westminster Abbey, Kate helped the children remember what they needed to do. "George, you'll walk with Dad and Grandpa. Charlotte and Louis, you'll stay with me. Remember to walk slowly and keep your heads up." The children nodded. They had practiced the ceremony many times at home. Even Louis, who was usually very active, knew this was a time to be on his best behavior. The cars stopped in front of the grand old church. Westminster Abbey had stood for over 900 years. Kings and queens had been crowned there for centuries. Today it was King Charles's turn, and his family would be there to support him. When the car doors opened, the sound hit them like a wave. Thousands of people were cheering. Bells rang from the church towers. Music played from a band nearby. Camera flashes went off everywhere, making it look like stars were twinkling in the daytime. William stepped out first. He stood tall in his red uniform with gold buttons. He turned to help Kate, who wore a beautiful silver dress and a small tiara that sparkled in the sun. Together, they helped the children out of the car. The family stood for a moment at the bottom of the church steps. They knew the whole world was watching. Cameras from every country were pointed at them. William gave Kate's hand a quick squeeze. They both took a deep breath. "Ready?" William asked his family. "Ready," they all said together. They began to walk up the steps. Prince George walked with perfect posture, looking serious and royal. Princess Charlotte held her mother's hand, her small crown of flowers sitting perfectly on her head. Prince Louis tried very hard not to bounce or skip as he walked. He wanted to show he could be grown up too. Inside the church, it was cool and quiet. The noise from outside seemed far away. The huge space was filled with sweet-smelling flowers and soft candlelight. Important people from all over the world stood as the royal family entered. Kings, queens, presidents, and prime ministers all watched as William, Kate, and their children walked down the long aisle. William saw his father waiting at the front of the church. King Charles looked nervous but happy. He smiled at his son and grandchildren. In his eyes, William could see how much this moment meant to him. After waiting longer than any heir in history, Charles was about to become king. The family took their places near the front of the church. As the music grew louder, they knew the ceremony was about to begin. This was the moment when history would be made, and they were all part of it. The music in Westminster Abbey grew louder. Everyone stood as King Charles walked down the long aisle. He wore a heavy red robe with white fur trim. Two helpers carried the end of his long robe so it would not drag on the floor. Prince George watched his grandfather with wide eyes. Soon, he would join him for an important part of the ceremony. George felt his father's hand on his shoulder, giving him a gentle squeeze of support. "You'll do great," William whispered to his son. The ceremony began with old songs that had been sung at coronations for hundreds of years. The high ceiling of the abbey made the voices echo in a beautiful way. Princess Charlotte sat very still, listening to every note. She loved music and sang quietly along with parts she knew from practice. Prince Louis, the youngest, tried his best to sit quietly. But the ceremony was long, and he was only 5 years old. He wiggled in his seat and whispered questions to his mother. "How much longer, Mummy?" he asked. Kate smiled and whispered back, "A little while yet. You're doing so well." The most important moment was coming soon. The Archbishop, an old man in gold robes, stood in front of King Charles. He held the crown. The same crown that kings and queens had worn for hundreds of years. It was heavy with gold and jewels that sparkled in the light from the tall windows. William watched with a mix of feelings. He was happy for his father, who had waited so long for this day. But he also knew that when his father became king, William's life would change too. He would have new duties and responsibilities as the Prince of Wales. Kate noticed the serious look on her husband's face. She reached over and took his hand. They had been through many big moments together. Their love and support for each other had never changed, even as their royal roles grew more important. The Archbishop raised the crown high so everyone could see it. The church went very quiet. Even little Louis stopped wiggling and watched with his mouth open in wonder. "I now present to you King Charles, your undoubted king," the Archbishop said in a loud voice. "Will you serve him?" "God save King Charles!" Everyone in the abbey shouted together. The sound was so loud that Charlotte jumped a little in surprise. Then came Prince George's big moment. He walked forward to join his grandfather. His job was to hold part of the special clothes the king would wear. George's face was very serious as he took his place. He knew everyone was watching him, and he wanted to make his family proud. William felt his eyes fill with tears as he watched his son. George looked so small next to all the grown-ups, but he stood tall and did his job perfectly. In that moment, William could see the future king that George would one day become. The Archbishop placed the heavy crown on King Charles's head. As soon as the crown touched his head, bells began to ring all over London. Outside the abbey, big guns fired to tell everyone England had a new king. Louis clapped his hands over his ears at the loud sounds. Kate put her arm around him and pulled him close. "It's all right," she said. "The noise means Grandpa is officially the king now." When King Charles stood up wearing his crown for the first time, everyone in the abbey bowed or curtsied. William bowed deeply to his father, now his king as well as his dad. Kate and Charlotte curtsied, bending their knees in the way they had practiced. Even Louis tried to bow, though he almost fell over doing it. The family watched as King Charles walked to his throne and sat down. The ceremony was not over yet, but the most important part was done. Now there would be more music and prayers before they all left the abbey. William looked at his children with pride. They had all done so well during the long ceremony. As a family, they had just been part of a historic moment that would be remembered forever. After the crown was placed on King Charles's head, there were more parts to the ceremony. The king held a gold stick called a scepter. He also held a round gold ball with a cross on top. These things showed he was now the ruler of the country. Prince Louis leaned over to his sister Charlotte. "Why does Grandpa need those things?" he whispered. Charlotte, who had listened carefully during their lessons about the coronation, was happy to explain. "The stick means he's in charge, and the ball means he rules the world," she whispered back. She liked knowing things her little brother didn't know. Kate smiled as she heard her children whisper. She was proud of how well they were doing during the long ceremony. Many children their age would have gotten bored and fussy by now. The ceremony continued with more music and prayers. Important people came forward to bow to the new king. William watched his father sitting on the throne. Charles looked both happy and serious. William knew his father had waited a very long time for this day. Prince George returned to sit with his family after his special job was done. William put his arm around his son's shoulders. "You did perfectly," he whispered to George. The boy smiled, looking relieved that his part was over. After 2 hours, the ceremony was finally ending. The choir sang a beautiful song as King Charles stood up from his throne. He would now walk back down the aisle and leave the abbey. This time, he wore his crown and carried his special items. As the king passed by their row, William and his family bowed and curtsied again. Louis almost forgot to bow until Charlotte nudged him with her elbow. The boy quickly bent forward in a little bow, making some nearby people smile at his cuteness. Then it was time for the royal family to follow the king out of the abbey. They walked in a special order, with William and Kate right behind King Charles. Their children followed them, walking slowly and carefully as they had practiced. Outside, the weather had changed. The sunny morning was now a cloudy afternoon. A light rain had started to fall, but the crowds were still huge. People had waited in the rain just to see the royal family leave the abbey. Workers quickly brought out large umbrellas. A man in a fancy uniform held one over Kate and the children as they came out of the church. Another held one for William. The rain made the day even more memorable. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The family got into a different vehicle for the ride back to Buckingham Palace. This time, it was a beautiful golden coach pulled by 8 white horses. The coach was very old and had been used in coronations for hundreds of years. "Is this a real fairy tale coach?" Louis asked with big eyes as they climbed inside. "Something like that," Kate answered with a smile. "It's over 200 years old." The inside of the coach was not as comfortable as their modern cars. It bounced and shook as it moved over the streets. Charlotte held onto her seat, and Louis thought it was funny how bumpy the ride was. In the old days, people had to travel like this all the time. William told his children, "No cars or trains or airplanes." "I like our car better," George said, making everyone laugh. As the coach rolled through the streets of London, the crowds cheered louder than ever. Now they were seeing their new king wearing his crown, and the future kings, William and George, riding with him. The rain started to fall harder, but it didn't stop the celebration. People opened umbrellas or just got wet. They had waited too long to miss this moment. Inside the coach, the family waved through the windows. Even with the rain and the bumpy ride, they felt the joy of the day. This was a moment in history that none of them would ever forget. "Almost home," William said as they got closer to Buckingham Palace. "And then comes the most important part." "What's that?" asked Louis. Standing on the balcony, Charlotte answered before her father could. "So everyone can see the new king." The golden coach rolled through the gates of Buckingham Palace. The rain was still falling, but not as hard as before. Workers with big umbrellas waited to help the royal family. Behind the gates, they could finally relax a little. The public could not see them here. "My legs are stiff," said Louis as he jumped out of the coach. He started to run around in small circles, happy to move freely after sitting still for so long. "Louis, careful of your nice clothes," Kate reminded him gently. She understood it was hard for a 5-year-old boy to stay proper all day. Inside the palace, everything was busy. Workers rushed around getting ready for the balcony appearance. This would be when the new king and his family showed themselves to the crowds. It was a tradition that went back many years. William led his family to a private room where they could rest for a few minutes. A table was set with snacks and drinks. The children, who had been hungry for hours, quickly took some small sandwiches and cookies. "You all did so well today," William told his family. "I'm very proud of you." Kate helped Charlotte fix her hair, which had gotten a bit messy in the rain. George stood by a window, watching the crowds that filled the streets outside the palace. Louis was trying to see how many cookies he could fit in his mouth at once. "Louis," Kate said when she noticed, "one at a time, please." A palace worker knocked on the door. "Your Royal Highnesses, it's time to get ready for the balcony appearance. The king is waiting for you." The family followed the worker through long hallways with beautiful paintings and fancy furniture. Many kings and queens had walked these same halls over hundreds of years. Now it was their turn to be part of history. They met King Charles in a room near the balcony doors. He still wore his crown and royal robes. When he saw his grandchildren, his serious face broke into a warm smile. "There are my little helpers," he said. "Did you enjoy the ceremony?" "It was very long, Grandpa," said Louis honestly, making the adults laugh. "Yes, it was," the king agreed. "But you were all very good." A worker came in with a weather report. "The rain has stopped, Your Majesty. The sun is coming out again." "Perfect timing," said the king. He looked at William. "Are we ready?" William nodded. This moment would be seen by millions of people around the world. The new king and his family would stand together on the balcony. It would show that the royal family would continue for many years to come. The balcony doors were opened. The sound of the crowd hit them like a wave. Thousands of people filled the area in front of the palace. They waved flags and cheered so loudly it was hard to hear anything else. King Charles stepped out first. The crowd roared when they saw him wearing his crown. William and Kate followed with their children. They lined up along the balcony rail. From here, they could see all the way down the mall, the famous road that led to the palace. Every inch was packed with people. Louis's eyes went wide at the sight. He had seen crowds before, but never this big. He waved with both hands over his head, making people in the crowd laugh and point. Charlotte, always proper, did her perfect royal wave. George stood tall next to his father, waving the way William did. The family stayed on the balcony for 10 minutes. They waved to the people and enjoyed the moment together. Planes from the Royal Air Force flew overhead, leaving trails of red, white, and blue smoke, the colors of the British flag. The crowd cheered even louder when they saw the planes. Louis pointed and jumped with excitement. "Look, look," he shouted, forgetting for a moment that he was supposed to be on his best behavior. William just smiled. His son was still a little boy, even on this very royal day. Kate looked at her family with pride. They had all played their parts well. The children were learning what it meant to be royal, to serve the people and represent the country. But they were also just children, growing up in a very special family. As they waved to the crowds below, Kate knew this was a day none of them would ever forget. After the balcony appearance, the royal family went back inside the palace. There was a special lunch for important guests. Kings, queens, presidents, and prime ministers from many countries were there to celebrate with King Charles. The big dining room was set with the best dishes and glasses. Gold plates and crystal cups shined under the bright lights of huge chandeliers. Fresh flowers from the palace gardens made the room smell sweet. "Do we have to sit still again?" Louis asked his mother as they entered the room. Kate smiled. "Just a little longer," she promised. "After lunch, we can change into more comfortable clothes." The children sat with their parents at a long table. William and Kate helped them remember their best manners. They had to use the right forks and spoons for each food. They had to sit up straight and talk politely to the people near them. An important lady from another country sat next to Charlotte. She was very impressed by the young princess. "You are so well behaved," the lady told Charlotte. "In my country, we have heard how proper you are." Charlotte smiled shyly. "Thank you," she said in a clear voice. "I practice a lot." George sat near his grandfather, the new king. He watched carefully how his grandfather spoke to the other leaders. One day, George would have to do the same things. He tried to remember everything he saw. Even Louis was on his best behavior, though he couldn't help swinging his legs under the table. They didn't reach the floor yet. Kate gently put her hand on his knee when he swung them too much. After the fancy meal, there was a toast to the new king. Everyone stood up and raised their glasses. William was asked to say a few words about his father. William stood tall and spoke in a clear voice that filled the room. "Today is a proud day for our family," he said. "My father has waited longer than anyone in history to become king. He has used that time well, learning and preparing. He will be a wonderful king." As William spoke, Kate watched him with pride. He would be a good king too when his time came. And their children were learning from both their father and grandfather. After lunch, the family finally had some private time. They went to their rooms in the palace to rest and change clothes. The children were happy to take off their fancy outfits. "Can I wear my normal clothes now?" Louis asked hopefully. "Yes, but clean ones," Kate told him. "We still have more events today." While the children changed, William and Kate had a quiet moment together. They stood by the window, looking out at the crowds that still filled the streets. "They did so well today," Kate said, meaning the children. William nodded. "They did. Especially George. Did you see how serious he was during the ceremony? He really understood how important it was. Kate smiled. Yes, but I'm glad they can still be children too. Louis made the Queen Mother laugh when he was waving on the balcony. The Queen Mother was King Charles's wife, Camilla. She was not the children's real grandmother, but she was kind to them, and they liked her. William put his arm around Kate's shoulders. We're lucky, he said. We have this big royal job, but we also have a happy family. That's more important than crowns and ceremonies. Kate leaned her head against his shoulder. She agreed. The royal part of their life was important, but the family part was what really mattered. A knock on the door ended their quiet moment. A palace worker came in with a schedule for the rest of the day. The carriage procession starts in 1 hour. Your Royal Highnesses, the worker said. The king has asked if the children will ride in the second carriage with you. William looked at Kate. They had not planned for the children to be in the next parade. It would be another long event with more crowds and cameras. Do you think they're too tired? William asked Kate quietly. Kate thought for a moment. Let's ask them, she said. They might surprise us. William and Kate went to find their children. George was reading a book about planes. Charlotte was drawing a picture of the crown she had seen today. Louis was playing with his toy cars on the carpet. Children, we have a question for you, Kate said. Grandpa has asked if you would like to ride in the carriage parade through London. It means more waving and more crowds. If you're too tired, you don't have to do it. The children looked at each other. George spoke first. I think we should do it. It's Grandpa's special day. Charlotte nodded. I want to go too. I like riding in the carriages. Everyone looked at Louis, who was often the most tired after big events, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Will we ride in the golden coach again? He asked. No, a different one this time, William answered. But it's still very special. With the horses? Louis asked. William nodded. Yes, with beautiful horses. Then I want to go, Louis said, jumping up from his cars. I like the horses. William and Kate smiled at each other. Their children had surprised them again with their sense of duty and excitement for royal events. All right then, William said. Let's get ready. The children changed into new outfits for the afternoon parade. The boys wore smart blue suits. Charlotte wore a pretty blue dress that matched her brother's. They looked like a perfect royal family when they stood together. A worker brought them small bottles of water and some snacks for energy. The day was long, and they needed to stay strong for the parade. Remember to keep waving and smiling, Kate reminded them as they walked through the palace halls. Even if your arm gets tired. My arm got tired last time, Louis said. I had to switch to my other arm. That's a good idea, Kate told him. You can wave with both arms if you need to. They met King Charles near the palace doors. He was wearing a new outfit too. Instead of his heavy crown, he now wore a lighter one made of purple and gold. Thank you for joining me again, the king said to his grandchildren. The people will be so happy to see you. The carriages waited in the palace yard. They were not as fancy as the golden coach, but they were still beautiful. Each was pulled by 4 white horses with riders in red coats. The king would ride in the first carriage with Queen Camilla. William, Kate, and their children would follow in the second carriage. Other members of the royal family would ride in carriages behind them. As they climbed into their carriage, Louis could hardly sit still. He loved horses and kept pointing at them. Look how big they are, he said. The inside of the carriage was soft with red velvet seats. The children sat between their parents. Outside, they could hear the crowd noise growing louder. People knew the parade was about to start. With a small jerk, the carriage began to move. The horses walked slowly, their hooves making a clip-clop sound on the ground. Palace guards on horses rode beside them to keep them safe. When they passed through the palace gates, the crowd roared with excitement. The parade route would take them through famous London streets. Thousands of people lined the way, many holding small flags or pictures of the new king. The family waved as they had practiced. Even though they were tired from the long day, They kept smiling. They knew how important this was for the people who had waited hours to see them. As they rode through London, Louis pointed at everything he saw. "Look at that big flag," he would say. Or, "That man has a funny hat." Kate had to remind him to keep waving. George and Charlotte were more serious about their duty. They waved steadily, turning from side to side so both sides of the street could see them. Sometimes they'd whispered to each other when they saw something interesting. The parade moved slowly through London. The sun was now shining brightly, making the day feel perfect. People threw flowers in front of the carriages. Some called out, "God save the King." As they passed, William leaned over to Kate. "They're doing amazingly well," he said quietly. "I don't think I could have done this at their age." Kate nodded. "They understand the job now. Even Louis is learning." As their carriage turned onto the Mall, the long road back to the palace, they could see the huge crowds waiting for them. The biggest part of the parade was still to come. The royal carriage rolled down the Mall, the famous road that led back to Buckingham Palace. On both sides, the crowds were bigger than ever. People stood 20 rows deep in some places. They had waited all day to see the new king and his family. Inside the carriage, the children were getting tired. They had been on their best behavior for many hours now. Louis started to lean against his mother. His little arm was sore from waving. "Are we almost done, honey?" he asked. "Almost," Kate said, giving him a small hug. "Just a bit more waving. You can see the palace ahead." She was right. At the end of the Mall, they could see Buckingham Palace. Its big gates were open, waiting for them to return. But first, they had to pass through the biggest crowd of all. As they got closer to the palace, the people began to sing. They sang "God Save the King," the song that had been played at the coronation. The sound of thousands of voices singing together filled the air. Charlotte joined in, singing softly. She knew all the words from school. George hummed along, not wanting to sing too loudly. William and Kate exchanged proud glances. Their children were part of this historic moment in their own ways. The king's carriage reached the palace gates first. The crowd cheered loudly as he disappeared inside. Now it was the turn of William, Kate, and their children. As their carriage passed through the gates, the children gave one final wave to the crowd. Then they were inside the palace grounds, away from the public eye. Louis let out a big sigh and stopped waving right away. "My arm feels funny," he said, shaking it. "It's all tingly." William laughed. "That happens when you wave for too long," he said. "Mine feels the same way." The carriage stopped at the palace doors. Workers helped them step down. Inside, the palace was quiet compared to the noise outside. The children's footsteps echoed on the marble floors as they walked through the grand hallway. "You were all wonderful," Kate told them. "Now we can rest before the next event." George looked up, surprised. "There's more?" he asked. William nodded. "Just one more thing," he said. "A family photo with Grandpa in his crown. Then a special dinner, and you can go to bed." The children followed their parents to a beautiful room with red walls and gold furniture. Photographers were setting up big cameras and lights. King Charles was already there, sitting in a grand chair with his crown beside him. "Ah, here they are," the king said when he saw his family. "My little troopers, come and sit with me for the historic photo." The photographers arranged them carefully. The king sat in the middle with his crown on a small table next to him. William stood behind his father's right shoulder. Kate stood on the left. The children were placed in front of their grandfather. George and Charlotte sat on small chairs, while Louis sat on a cushion on the floor. "Everyone look at the camera," the photographer said. "This picture will be in history books someday." The family smiled as the cameras clicked. Even Louis managed to sit still for the important photos. After the formal shots were done, the photographer suggested some more relaxed pictures. "Can we do a fun one?" Louis asked. The king smiled. "Why not? It's been a long day of being serious." For the last photo, the king pretended to place his crown on George's head. It was much too big and almost covered the boy's eyes. Everyone laughed at how silly it looked. The photographer captured this sweet family moment that showed a different side of the royal family. After the photos, they went to a small dining room for a private family dinner. This was not like the fancy lunch with important guests. It was just the family, eating together after their big day. The children were allowed to eat their favorite foods. Louis had chicken nuggets and fries. Charlotte had pasta. George had a small steak like his father. They all had ice cream for dessert. As they ate, they talked about the day. Each person shared their favorite moment from the coronation. "I liked when the planes flew over," Louis said. "They were so loud." "I liked the music in the abbey," Charlotte said. "It was beautiful." "I liked holding Grandpa's robe," George said quietly. It felt important. The king listened to his grandchildren with a warm smile. Despite all the grand ceremony and tradition of the day, these simple family moments seemed to matter most to him. After dinner, it was finally time for the children to go to bed. They were very tired from the long, exciting day. Their eyes were heavy, and even Louis had stopped bouncing around. "Say goodnight to Grandpa," Kate told the children. One by one, they gave King Charles a hug. The king bent down so the little ones could reach him. He still wore some of his fancy clothes, but his crown was put away safely. "Thank you for being such good helpers today," the king told them. "I was very proud to have you with me." "Will you wear your crown to breakfast tomorrow?" Louis asked, making everyone laugh. "No, I think I'll leave it in its special box," the king answered with a smile. "Crowns are not very comfortable for eating toast." William and Kate took the children upstairs to their rooms in the palace. Usually they stayed at their own home, but tonight they would sleep at Buckingham Palace. The children were excited to stay in the grand bedrooms. Charlotte's room had a beautiful four-poster bed with pink curtains hanging around it. "It's like a princess bed from a story," she said as she climbed in. George's room had blue walls with paintings of ships. He looked out his window at the palace gardens below. "I can see where we played last summer," he told his father. Louis had the smallest room, but it had toy soldiers on a shelf that once belonged to his father. He lined them up carefully before getting into bed. Kate tucked each child in and kissed them goodnight. "You were all so wonderful today," she told them. "People will remember how well you did for many years." William sat on the edge of George's bed for a moment. "Today you saw what our family's job is," he said, "to serve the people and be part of the country's big moments. Someday it will be my turn to wear the crown. And after that, it will be yours." George nodded seriously. "I know, Dad. I'll be ready when it's time." William smiled and ruffled his son's hair. "That's a long way off. For now, just be a boy and enjoy growing up." After the children were asleep, William and Kate joined King Charles on a small balcony. From here, they could see that many people were still outside the palace. Some had stayed all day just to be part of the historic moment. All over London, there were parties in the streets. People played music and danced. They hung flags from windows and shared food with neighbors. The whole country was celebrating their new king. "What a day it has been," the king said, looking out at the city lights. "I have waited a very long time for this." "You did wonderfully, Father," William told him. "Everyone could see how much you care about serving the country." Kate smiled as she listened to them talk. The crown had passed from mother to son, and someday it would pass from father to son again. The royal family had a job that lasted for generations. As the night grew later, bright fireworks started to light up the sky over London. Red, blue, gold, and silver sparks filled the darkness. The loud booms echoed between the buildings. "Should we wake the children to see this?" Kate asked. "They would love the fireworks." William shook his head. "Let them sleep. They've earned their rest today. There will be other fireworks, other big days." The three of them stood together, watching the beautiful lights in the sky. The fireworks showed that this was a special day for the whole country. A new time had begun with a new king. Later that night, when the fireworks were over and the king had gone to his rooms, William and Kate walked quietly through the hall to check on their children. All three were sound asleep. In George's room, William stood looking at his son. The boy who would someday be king was just a child now, sleeping peacefully with his arm around a teddy bear. Charlotte had kicked off her covers, and Kate gently pulled them back over her. Louis was spread out like a star across his bed, his mouth open as he snored softly. William put his arm around Kate's shoulders as they watched their sleeping children. "They'll remember this day forever," he said quietly. "Yes," Kate agreed. "And so will we. Our family was part of history today." They closed the doors softly and walked back to their own room. Tomorrow would be a normal day again. School lessons, playtime, family meals. The crowns and carriages would be put away. But something had changed. The children had seen what their future held, the duty and the honor that came with being royal. And they had shown everyone that they were ready for whatever came next.